The morning of May 6, 2023, broke over London with a gentle drizzle that seemed to mirror the bittersweet emotions sweeping across Britain. Inside Kensington Palace, Prince William stood before a full-length mirror, adjusting the ceremonial robes that had been carefully prepared for this historic day. His hands, usually steady and confident, trembled slightly as he fastened the golden clasps. This was not just any royal ceremony. This was the day his father would become king, and William would take his most significant step yet toward his own destiny. Catherine, Princess of Wales, entered the room quietly, her elegant blue dress perfectly complementing the solemnity of the occasion. She placed a gentle hand on her husband's shoulder, understanding without words the weight of emotions he carried. Their 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, had been prepared for weeks about the importance of this day, but William knew that no amount of preparation could truly ready someone for such a profound moment. The previous evening, William had spent hours in his study, reading through the ancient texts that detailed the coronation rituals. The same ceremonies that had crowned monarchs for over 1,000 years would now crown his father. But one particular moment in the ceremony weighed heavily on his mind, the moment when he, as the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne, would kneel before his father and pledge his loyalty. It was a tradition that dated back centuries, but for William, it represented something far more personal. As the family's convoy wound through the streets of London, William gazed out at the thousands of people who had camped overnight despite the rain. Union Jacks fluttered from every corner, and the faces of well-wishers pressed against the barriers, their excitement palpable even through the bulletproof glass. These were the people he would one day serve as king, and their presence reminded him of the continuity of the monarchy, a golden thread connecting past, present, and future. Westminster Abbey loomed before them, its Gothic spires reaching toward the gray sky like ancient fingers. William had been here many times before, for his mother's funeral, for his own wedding, for celebrations and sorrows alike. But today the Abbey seemed transformed, draped in gold and crimson, humming with an energy that spoke of history in the making. Inside the Abbey, the atmosphere was electric yet reverent. 2,000 guests from around the world had gathered, representing nations, faiths, and communities. William could see familiar faces, world leaders, celebrities, and longtime friends of the royal family. But his attention was drawn to the front rows where his family sat. His children looked small but dignified in their formal attire, Charlotte's hand protectively holding Louis's as they waited for the ceremony to begin. The prince took his designated seat, his military uniform pristine, medals glinting in the light that streamed through the Abbey's stained glass windows. As the organ began to play, its deep notes reverberating through the ancient stones, William closed his eyes for a moment, remembering another day in this abbey, September 6, 1997, when he had walked behind his mother's coffin, just a boy of 15 trying to be brave for the world watching. Now, 26 years later, he was a man with his own family, about to witness his father's greatest triumph. The complexity of emotions, pride, duty, love, and loss, swirled within him like the incense that began to fill the Abbey air. King Charles entered, the imperial state crown not yet upon his head, walking with the measured pace of a man who had waited 7 decades for this moment. William watched his father's face, seeing there a mirror of his own emotions. Charles had been the longest-serving heir apparent in British history, and now, at 74, he was finally ascending to the role he had been born to fulfill. The weight of that journey, the patience required, the service given while waiting, William understood it all too well. For he was now walking a similar path. As the Archbishop of Canterbury began the ancient ritual, speaking words that had been uttered at coronations since William the Conqueror, the Prince of Wales found himself thinking of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. Her absence was felt keenly throughout the Abbey. She had been the constant in all their lives, the steady hand that had guided the monarchy through 7 decades of change. William knew his father felt her absence most acutely of all. The ceremony progressed with its careful choreography, the anointing with holy oil, hidden from public view by a specially embroidered screen, the presentation of the royal regalia, each piece heavy with symbolism and history, the prayers and hymns that bound the monarchy to its sacred duty. William participated with the practiced ease of someone raised in royal tradition, but his mind kept returning to the moment that was approaching. His moment. Young Prince George, sitting nearby, caught his father's eye and gave a small, encouraging smile. At 9 years old, George was beginning to understand the magnitude of these ceremonies, the weight of the crown that would one day pass to him. William returned the smile, drawing strength from his son's innocent courage. In that moment, he saw the future of the monarchy, the continuation of a 1,000-year story. The ceremony moved toward its climax. The Archbishop lifted the St. Edward's crown, solid gold, studded with precious stones weighing nearly 5 pounds. As it descended onto Charles's head, a collective intake of breath seemed to sweep through the Abbey. "God save the King!" rang out, the ancient acclamation that formally recognized Charles III as the monarch. But for William, the most significant moment was yet to come. As the newly crowned king took his seat on the throne, the time arrived for the homage, the moment when the Prince of Wales would kneel before his father and sovereign. William rose from his seat, his movements deliberate and measured. Every eye in the Abbey, every camera broadcasting to millions around the world focused on him. The walk to the throne seemed both endless and too brief. With each step, William felt the weight of history pressing down upon him. This was not merely protocol or pageantry. This was a son honoring his father, a future king acknowledging the present one, a moment that would be replayed and remembered for generations to come. As Prince William approached the throne where his father sat crowned, the silence in Westminster Abbey became profound. 2,000 guests, millions watching worldwide, and yet in that moment it felt as though only father and son existed in that sacred space. The golden throne elevated Charles, making him appear both regal and remote, but William could see past the crown and ceremonial robes to the man who had raised him, guided him, and shared his own grief and joys. William descended to one knee before the throne, his movements graceful, despite the weight of his ceremonial robes and the intensity of emotions coursing through him. The ancient words of homage rose to his lips, words that had been spoken by heirs to monarchs for centuries. But never before had they been broadcast to billions across the globe in real time. I, William, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship, William began, his voice clear and strong, carrying across the hushed Abbey. Each word was deliberate, weighted with meaning that went far beyond mere tradition. Faith and truth I will bear unto you, to live and die, against all manner of folks. So help me God. As he spoke these solemn vows, William reached up to touch the crown his father wore. The gesture, prescribed by ancient protocol, became something more, a bridge between sovereign and heir, between past and future. At that precise moment, King Charles's composure, maintained so carefully throughout the ceremony, began to crack. His eyes, visible to those watching closely, filled with tears that he could not quite blink away. The cameras captured it all, the trembling of Charles's lips, the way his hand moved slightly as though to reach for his son, the profound emotion that transformed the king's face from regal solemnity to paternal love. This was not just a king receiving homage from his heir. This was a father receiving the ultimate gesture of respect and love from his firstborn son. William, still kneeling, saw his father's emotion, and felt his own eyes begin to burn with unshed tears. In that moment, all the complexities of their relationship, the shared loss of Diana, the years of growing understanding, the challenges of royal duty balanced against personal desires, crystallized into pure, unconditional love. The prince leaned forward and kissed his father's cheek. Another requirement of the ceremony that became an intimate moment between father and son. The kiss was gentle, respectful, but filled with the warmth of genuine affection. As William's lips touched his father's cheek, a single tear escaped Charles's control, rolling down his face in full view of the watching world. The Archbishop of Canterbury, standing nearby, seemed to pause, recognizing the profound humanity of the moment unfolding before the ancient altar. In the congregation, Catherine, Princess of Wales, pressed a handkerchief to her eyes, her usual composure giving way to the emotion of watching her husband and father-in-law share such a powerful moment. Young Prince George watched with wide eyes, perhaps understanding for the first time the deep bonds of duty and love that would one day bind him to his own father in the same way. Princess Charlotte, wise beyond her years, reached for her mother's hand, while little Prince Louis, overwhelmed by the grandeur and emotion, buried his face in Catherine's shoulder. Across the Abbey, members of the royal family, hardened diplomats and world leaders, found themselves unexpectedly moved by the raw display of emotion between the king and his heir. As William rose from his knees, Charles did something unscripted, something that would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. The king stood, breaking protocol, and embraced his son. It was brief, lasting only seconds, but in that embrace was contained all the love of a father who had watched his boy grow into a man worthy of the crown, all the pride of seeing his son honor tradition while bringing his own warmth and humanity to it. The congregation, initially stunned by this departure from rigid ceremony, began to respond. A soft murmur rippled through the Abbey, and then, starting from somewhere in the back rows, applause began. It started tentatively, unsure if such a display was appropriate in this most solemn of ceremonies, but it grew, spreading through the Abbey like wildfire. Soon the ancient stones echoed with applause that was not for the pageantry or the crown, but for the simple, beautiful humanity of a father and son's love. Outside the Abbey, the crowds watching on giant screens erupted in cheers. The British Reserve, so often remarked upon by the world, melted away in the face of such genuine emotion. People hugged strangers, tears flowed freely, and Union Jacks waved with renewed vigor. The moment had transformed from a state occasion to a deeply personal celebration that resonated with anyone who had ever knelt before a parent. Anyone who had ever felt the complex mix of duty and love that defines family relationships. Social media exploded with the images, the tear on Charles's cheek, William's bowed head, the embrace that broke 1,000 years of protocol. Within minutes, the hashtags King and Prince and Saxe Father and Son were trending globally. People from every corner of the world shared their own stories of fathers and sons, of duty and love, of moments when ceremony gave way to genuine human connection. In royal palaces across Europe, monarchs and their heirs watched with particular interest. The British monarchy, often seen as the most traditional and rigid of the remaining royal houses, had shown that it could balance ancient tradition with modern emotional authenticity. The lesson was clear. The crown need not crush the human heart beneath it. As the ceremony continued, both Charles and William had to compose themselves, returning to their prescribed roles. But something had shifted in the Abbey, in the nation, perhaps in the monarchy itself. The remaining rituals, the homage of the bishops and peers, the presentation to the people, the final procession, all seemed infused with a warmth that had been kindled in that moment of connection. William returned to his seat, but not before catching his father's eye one more time. The look they exchanged, brief but profound, said everything that ceremony and words could not. It spoke of understanding, of shared burden, of the knowledge that one day William would sit where Charles now sat, and perhaps his own son would kneel before him with the same mixture of duty and devotion. The BBC commentators, usually so controlled and professional, struggled to maintain their composure as they described the scene to radio listeners. One veteran broadcaster, who had covered royal events for 4 decades, said simply, "In all my years of reporting on the royal family, I have never seen anything quite so moving. This is history, yes, but it is also deeply, profoundly human." As the ceremony moved toward its conclusion, the atmosphere in the Abbey remained charged with emotion. The traditional reserve had been breached, and in its place was something more precious, a recognition that even kings and princes are, at their core, fathers and sons, bound by the same love that unites families everywhere. The crown jewels sparkled in the light, the ancient words echoed through the Abbey, but it was the tear on a king's cheek and the kiss of a son that would be remembered. The impact of that profound moment between King Charles III and Prince William rippled far beyond Westminster Abbey's ancient walls. As the ceremony concluded, and the newly crowned king processed out of the Abbey with the Prince of Wales at his side, the world had witnessed something that would fundamentally reshape perceptions of the modern monarchy. In the days that followed, newspapers across the globe featured the iconic image on their front pages, the tear on Charles's cheek as William kissed it, a moment of vulnerability from a king and the devotion of a son. Editorial writers, usually quick to criticize or analyze royal actions through political lenses, found themselves writing about fathers and sons, about the courage it takes to show emotion in public, about how strength can manifest in tenderness. The palace, initially concerned about the break in protocol, quickly realized they had witnessed a defining moment for the monarchy's future. William's gesture and Charles's emotional response had done more to humanize the institution than years of carefully managed public relations could have achieved. Letters and emails poured into Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace by the thousands, with people sharing how the moment had touched them, how it had reminded them of their own relationships with parents or children. One particularly moving letter came from a man in Manchester who had been estranged from his father for 15 years. Watching William kneel before Charles, seeing the love evident in that simple gesture of homage, had inspired him to reach out to his own father. They had reconciled the very next day, both men crying as they embraced for the first time in over a decade. "If a future king can kneel before his father with such love," the man wrote, "then surely I can find the humility to bridge the gap with mine." Prince William, returning to his duties after the coronation, found himself deeply affected by the public response. At every engagement, people wanted to talk not about policy or royal duties, but about that moment. Mothers with sons, fathers with their own complicated relationships with their children, young people struggling to balance duty to family with personal desires, all found in William someone who understood these universal challenges. During a visit to a community center in Wales, an elderly woman grasped William's hand and with tears in her eyes told him how watching him with his father had reminded her of her late son's devotion. William spent 20 minutes with her, listening to her stories, sharing his own reflections on the importance of expressing love while we can. His staff, usually concerned with keeping to schedule, recognized this was more important than any timetable. King Charles, too, found his reign beginning under an unexpectedly warm light. The man who had waited longer than any heir in British history to become king, who had faced criticism and scrutiny throughout his years as Prince of Wales, was suddenly seen through new eyes. The image of him struggling to contain his emotions as his son pledged loyalty had revealed the man beneath the crown, and the nation responded with an outpouring of support and affection. In private moments at Balmoral, Charles and William would speak about that day. The king confessed he had not expected to be so overwhelmed. That feeling William's hand on the crown and receiving his kiss had brought home the reality of kingship in a way that all the ceremony and tradition had not. William, in turn, shared how in that moment of kneeling, he had felt connected not just to his father, but to all the generations of princes who had performed the same act, understanding for the first time the true weight of continuity that the monarchy represented. The impact extended to William's own children. Prince George, having witnessed his father's dignity and emotion, began to ask deeper questions about what it meant to be royal, about duty and service. William and Catherine found themselves having conversations with their children about the balance between public duty and private emotion, about how being strong sometimes means showing vulnerability. Princess Charlotte, inspired by the ceremony, began creating drawings of crowns and thrones, but always with families around them. Her art teacher at school noted that the young princess seemed to understand intuitively that monarchy was about connection, not just authority. Even young Prince Louis, in his childlike way, would play Coronation with his siblings, always insisting on hugging after the homage part. International observers noted how this moment had strengthened the monarchy's position at a time when Republican sentiments had been growing in some Commonwealth realms. The human connection displayed between Charles and William had reminded people that beyond the institution were real people carrying out roles they had not chosen, but had embraced with dedication and love. Royal historians would later mark this coronation as a turning point in the monarchy's evolution. Professor Sarah Gristwood of Oxford University wrote, "The moment when Prince William touched his father's crown and King Charles's tears fell was when the British monarchy truly entered the 21st century. It showed that duty and emotion need not be enemies, that tradition can coexist with authentic human expression." The moment also influenced how William approached his own role as heir. He became more open in public engagements, more willing to show emotion when moved by the people he met. During a visit to a children's hospice, when a young boy asked if princes ever cry, William knelt down to the child's level and said, "Princes cry just like everyone else. Being brave doesn't mean not feeling things. It means feeling them and carrying on with love." Catherine later revealed that the night after the coronation, William had spent hours with their children, talking about what they had witnessed. He had told them that the most important crown anyone could wear was invisible, the crown of being a good person, a loving family member, a dutiful citizen. George had asked if he would one day have to kneel before his father like that, and William's answer had been simple. "One day, yes. But every day until then and after, we'll just be father and son, and that's the most important thing." Charities reported increased donations in the weeks following the coronation, with many donors citing the father-son moment as inspiration. Organizations focused on family relationships, fathers' rights, and intergenerational connection saw particular increases in support. The Prince's Trust, Charles's longtime charity, launched a new program focused on mentorship between older and younger men, inspired by the relationship between the king and his heir. Artists and poets found inspiration in the moment. A young British poet laureate penned verses about the tear that launched 1,000 reconciliations, while painters captured the scene in styles ranging from classical realism to modern abstraction. The Royal Academy hosted an exhibition titled Duty and Devotion, featuring artistic interpretations of the coronation moment that had captured the world's heart. Even the usually cynical realm of social media remained surprisingly positive about the moment. Memes celebrating fathers and sons, edited videos set to emotional music, and personal stories of family reconciliation continued to circulate months after the coronation. The image of William kneeling before Charles became a symbol not of subservience, but of the strength found in honoring those we love. As the first anniversary of the coronation approached, documentary makers revealed previously unseen footage and interviews. William, speaking candidly, admitted that he had nearly been overwhelmed by emotion himself. "When I saw my father's tears," he said, "I realized that this ancient ceremony had become something deeply personal. It was no longer just about the crown or the country. It was about us, about family, about the love that sustains us through our duties." Charles, in his own interview, reflected on how that moment had shaped his approach to kingship. "William showed me that a king can be strong and gentle, formal and loving, dutiful and human. In receiving his homage, I received a lesson in how to reign with heart as well as head." The documentary revealed that after the public ceremony, the family had gathered privately at Buckingham Palace. Away from cameras and crowds, Charles had embraced each of his grandchildren, telling them how proud he was of their composure during the long ceremony. But it was a private moment between Charles and William that those present would never forget. The king removing his crown and placing it briefly on his son's head, saying simply, "One day, but not for a very long time, I pray." The legacy of that coronation moment continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Schools began teaching about emotional intelligence using the royal example. Therapists reported clients bringing up the image as a breakthrough moment in understanding their own family dynamics. Military academies discussed how showing emotion could be a form of courage rather than weakness. As William continued his royal duties, preparing for his own eventual destiny, he carried with him the memory of that moment in Westminster Abbey. In speeches, he would often reference the importance of expressing love and loyalty not just in grand gestures, but in daily life. "My father taught me that a crown is just metal and jewels," he would say, "but the love between a parent and child, that's the real precious inheritance." The coronation of King Charles III would be remembered for many things: the pageantry, the history, the bringing together of nations and faiths. But for millions who watched around the world, it would forever be the coronation where a son's devotion and a father's tears reminded humanity that love transcends all crowns, all ceremonies, all the pomp and circumstance that tradition can muster. In that moment of connection between Charles and William, people saw their own relationships reflected and elevated. Proof that even in the most formal of settings, the human heart will find a way to express its deepest truths. And so the story of that day passed into legend, not as a tale of crowns and scepters, but as a reminder that in our moments of greatest ceremony, our most profound duty, it is love that truly makes us noble. The tears of a king and the kiss of a prince had written a new chapter in the ancient book of monarchy, one where strength was found in tenderness, where protocol bowed to genuine emotion, and where the watching world learned that sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is simply show how much they love.